It's hard to believe, but JonBenet Ramsey would be 25 years old if she were alive today. But the little girl never saw another birthday after her murder in December of 1996. The mystery is still unsolved after nearly 2 decades now. But now we're learning new details about the crime that may shed new light on this case. CNN's Ana Cabrera reports.
Who killed JonBenet Ramsey?
There is a killer on the loose.
The 6-year-old beauty queen was found dead in the basement of her family's Boulder home the day after Christmas in 1996.
I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
While a killer has never been caught, new details about the case just revealed by a lead investigator, former Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner. In a recent Ask Me Anything session with Reddit, which has now been deleted, Beckner shared new information about how JonBenet died, saying she was hit in the head, knocked unconscious, 45 minutes to 2 hours prior to being strangled. He also says JonBenet most likely wasn't sexually assaulted at the time of her killing, despite a 1999 grand jury report that indicated there was reason to believe otherwise. Beckner suggests instead that was all staged.
By last count, we had investigated over 140 people as possible suspects in this case.
In 2009, Beckner spoke regretfully that not one suspect had been identified, the mystery unsolved. Now, Beckner admits mistakes were made by police in the initial days after the crime. In retrospect, he says JonBenet's parents should have been separated and their statements taken immediately. He called it a perfect storm-type scenario. It was the Christmas holiday and we were short-staffed, he writes, and there was confusion at the scene as people were arriving before we had enough personnel on the scene. As a result, some evidence was compromised. The redeeming value of Beckner's candid confession of sorts.
All of these details converge, and it will create renewed interest. It will create renewed scrutiny, and it might trigger somebody to remember something.
Ana Cabrera, CNN, Denver.
Incredible questions now, right, about that unsolved murder. These new revelations about this case raising so many new questions. Joining me right now, criminal defense attorney Richard Herman. Usually we're so used to seeing you along with Avery. We have the pleasure of having you solo. You are going to be with Avery later on today. Oh, okay. He's still going to join us via satellite from Cleveland, but yeah, we're glad to have you here and to talk about this because, you know, this is one of those cases. It is mysterious. Of course, it is the one that has provoked so many different theories about whatever happened to. How could this police chief reveal this kind of information now in this kind of forum? Did he realize that it was something that the public would be able to read, embrace, learn from, or did he think this was a private conversation?
Yeah, Fred, I don't think he knew this was going to go viral the way it did, but I think it gives us insight. Right. Yeah. I think it gives us insight in what's burning him up. And it's been 14 years, Fred, we've been doing legal on weekends.
I know. It's hard to believe.
And we've covered cases where district attorneys have kind of corrupted the investigation and the prosecution, Mike Nifong and the Duke LaCrosse case. Well, here, this district attorney took over the investigative stage. He took the power away from the police, and incredibly, he shielded the Ramseys. In this type of case, they were not interviewed individually until some 5 months after the murder of JonBenet. That's outrageous.
So these discoveries that Beckner talks about in terms of the blow to the head, these are things that I don't think most people had ever heard before. The blow to the head that JonBenet may have suffered, and that the strangulation came nearly between 45 and 2 hours later. Is this information that Boulder Police was able to discover, substantiate, and when you talk about the district attorney, the prosecutors then took over, that information was suppressed? Or is it a matter of this is information that now Beckner is allowed to talk about because of so many years after the fact?
Yeah, they knew about this. They had all this information.
Knew this.
Everyone
Just
knew
the public
it was blunt force trauma to the head, which would have ultimately caused her death, but apparently about an hour and a half after that blunt force trauma, someone strangled her. And then there was this ransom note that apparently was written on the mother's stationery in perhaps similar or her own handwriting some 2.5 pages, and it was written at the time of the murder, which is preposterous. It really, and no sign of break-in in the house, no other viable DNA evidence at the scene there.
There was a lot of finger pointing at the parents, and there was a brother, and the public was led to believe that all of them were cleared. With this kind of information, that it appears now that she wasn't sexually assaulted, she was assaulted, but not with some artificial means, and it came after her death, according to what Beckner is saying. Does that invite furthering the investigation, returning to people who have been questioned, whether they were... the case is not closed. Can it be reopened in a very fervent kind of way?
Yeah, any murder does not have a statute of limitations, so they could open. Now, of course, Mrs. Ramsey's dead, and she might have been one of the prime targets had they done this properly from the beginning.
She died of cancer.
She died of cancer. And I think, Fred, what happened on the sexual molestation portion of this is that there was evidence that she had been molested, but prior to the murder.
And that was a new discovery.
Prior to the murder.
That she may have been sexually assaulted repeatedly.
Yeah. Prior.
Days, weeks.
Exactly.
Prior to this, not prior as in just moments before.
The incredible scenario is that the parents who were in the house at the time were not interviewed by law enforcement, were not allowed to be interviewed because a district attorney said, lay off them, stay away from them. They are high society people, they're very wealthy, and he runs for election. He said, stay away from them, don't interview them. 5 months were wasted where they couldn't get them separately in rooms to get their pin down their versions. It's really upsetting. It's not the perfect storm. It's a corrupted investigation. That's what it is.
All right. Thanks so much for your input on this. We're going to see you again next hour with Avery. Of course, we're going to talk about a few other cases. This one, which has also received a whole lot of attention. Don't you remember these 2 young girls who said they were inspired by Slender Men in which to try to attempt murder on their good friend? We're going to talk about that coming up.